This meeting is being recorded.
Thank you. Public participation guidelines. Members of the public wishing to participate in the meeting must use their full name for Zoom access. The town reserves the right to remove any member of the public from the meeting who doesn't use a full name or acts inappropriately. Confirming member access. Let me introduce myself. I am Andrew Lowell, Chairman of the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members of the board, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Peter Brace.
Aye.
Scott Anderson.
Here.
David Bossy.
Here.
Dave Franzuto.
Here.
Ginger Andrews.
Here.
Staff, I see Tara Riley.
Present.
Thank you. Do we have any other staff? I'm on gallery here, just Cona's, the other Kona from the public.
Yep.
Good afternoon. This open meeting of the Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board is being conducted remotely. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board is convening by video conference via Zoom as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating via video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you. Take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials have been provided. Members of this body are also available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Meeting ground rules. Permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. The chair will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name. If members wish to engage in a conversation with other members, please do so through the chair and identify yourself. After members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment to those members of the public that have joined the meeting. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their names and be acknowledged by and speak through the chair. Finally, each vote taken tonight in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board, May 17th, 2022. Can we have a motion to approve tonight's agenda, please?
So moved, Mr. Chairman. This is Ginger. Second, then.
All right, motion's been made by Peter Brace, seconded by Ginger Andrews to approve tonight's agenda. All in favor, Mr. Brace?
Aye.
Ms. Andrews?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Bossy?
Aye.
Mr. Franzuto?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Has everybody reviewed the draft minutes for April 19th? Are there any revisions to be made?
My apologies, but I sent them like 15, 20 minutes before the meeting, so I
Okay,
just how my week went, but I did finish them.
thank you, Peter. We'll take that up at our next meeting.
Okay.
Chairman's report. We've just come through another election cycle. We have 2 new members. I'd like to graciously thank 2 departing members, Tom Sidlowski and Dan Pronk. Welcome back, Dave Bossy. Welcome, Scott Anderson. Welcome, Steve Payer. And so election of officers is usually done by a nomination. At this point, Mr. Sidlowski is vice chairman. I am chairman, and Mr. Brace is the secretary. These are the 3 spaces to fill. Do we have any nominations?
Andy, we should wait till we have a full board. Should wait till Mr. Payer gets here.
If you'd prefer, all right, we can take it up at our next meeting.
Just to say that Mr. Payer is 87 years old. I'm getting the sense from talking to him that it was a big deal to get on this, to run for this board and to be on it. So I don't think it'd be right to be leaving him out.
Mr. Brace, I'm obliged. That's fine. We'll move forward to Marine Department report. If any, do we have representation tonight?
Sheila is not here.
Thank you. Natural Resources. Tara, please.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm just going to read some notes from our last meeting, if you don't mind, real quick. So in the hatchery right now, we have our 2 bay scallop spawns and our quahog spawns. I just sieved everything today, and we are moving them outside tomorrow into our flow-through tanks. They're eating way too much food, so we need some space. And we're going to start spawning next week because our interns are coming and we'll have more help. So that's exciting. The incoming water temperature for the hatchery is registering at 59, which is pretty warm. So that's been pretty awesome. At the end of this week, we are going out to Nantucket to monitor the seed that was moved the past few months. We're gonna GPS everything, and then we're gonna be measuring the temperature at the surface and the bottom, the dissolved oxygen, and we're gonna be measuring the scallops and looking for predation, and also observing how much shell is mixed in with it and the densities that the seed got moved back at. We're also starting to look at the eelgrass. We're going to start up in the head of the harbor because that's where it's going to be the warmest. And we're looking for the reproductive shoots that are going to start forming flowers and seeds because we are doing eelgrass restoration this year with the Nantucket Land Council. So yeah, we're going to start looking at that. So the DMF letter that everyone read and reviewed last month, we did get a reply, and we got a reply without having to ask for one, which was pretty amazing, I thought. But so what they did is they kind of pushed it back onto the FDA. They said that they're waiting on the FDA to, I guess the FDA is doing a site visit on Nantucket. And so they wanted them to kind of see for themselves what was written in the letter. And so we're currently trying to figure out who exactly from the DMF or from the FDA is going to be coming with the DMF. And we're going to see if we can possibly have a conversation with them before they come out, just to kind of talk to them about what it is that we're trying to do. The one thing that the DMF did do is that they sent back the letter with the line drawn from the second pier to the Coast Guard. And originally the line was drawn from the second pier over in Monomoy to Brant Point. And that's where the closure is for town and also the hatchery. And we're trying to get the hatchery omitted from that closure. And so they did redraw the line, but pending, they're going to be taking samples at the Coast Guard station this summer and also at the hatchery and doing a comparison. But I took that as a positive thing that they were willing to look at it. So yeah, we'll just see. But for right now, NT 2.6, which is Holbert Ave and the horse shed, is close to clamming. That's not something that we wanted. That's why we wrote the letter. But they seem to want to wait on the FDA before discussing it further. So that's where that stands right now. Let's see what else. We're getting ready to start our public tours. We're going to offer them starting in June, July, August, and they're going to be on Mondays and Thursdays. I'm not sure of the exact time, but we're going to have some sort of online sign-up sheet where we can take 15 people a day to go through this particular time slot that we have. So stay tuned for that. We also have a lot of camps coming through the hatchery, and we are also going to the Boys and Girls Club this summer to do some educational outreach. That seems to be where the largest amount of kids are for the summer for the elementary age group. And then we're also working with the Great Harbor Yacht Club doing some community service work. So they have some older students that are going to be coming through and doing some hands-on learning for a week. And they'll be getting community service hours for that. We're still trying to work on our eelgrass surveys that occur in September. We've done them annually, and we're having a hard time getting funding for them. So our plan is for fiscal year 23 to write it into as a line item in our budget for just doing basic like monitoring, restoration work, and see if the town will approve, you know, a certain amount of funding that we can use for this sort of thing every year, because it's really hard to go to like the usual funding sources like the yacht club or nonprofits for the same work every year. Nobody wants to fund that without, you know, having something new and exciting going on. So I think we probably will be able to probably fund it this year, doing kind of what we've done in the past, using our staff for diving and just doing Nantucket Harbor. We're not going to be able to do Matticat Harbor. It's just too expensive and it takes too much time without having the right funding available. But it is an important thing to keep going, to know, you know, to monitor the shellfish and the eelgrass and know how it's changing, because we need this information for upcoming projects that we have, like our sedimentation and dredge plan and stuff like that. So it's something that's necessary to keep going. Other fun news, NSA is sponsoring, well, NSA and Nantucket Land Council are sponsoring an Oyster Fest at Cisco Brewery, June 12th from 12 to 4. It's gonna have all Nantucket oysters there, so you can try them all in one spot. And let me see what other news I have from everybody else. Morgan is our endangered species monitor, and she has been going through drone training right now and also checking out all the birds around the island. She said plovers are present at Jetties, Low Beach, 40th Pole, Smiths Point, Tippecways. Jetties is currently closed to driving. Everything is fenced, and by her estimations, the earliest hatch date will be, what did she say? May 2nd. Well, that's already happened. Maybe I have that wrong. I think maybe it's May 20th. She said there's 10 nests total right now that she's found. And I think that's it. Thais said she's gonna pop on in a little bit for the water quality. Oh, I know. There was a herring discussion at the Board of Selectmen. I'm not sure if anyone was following that, but Jeff said, based on, let's see, he said there's no dredging currently needed for the Matticat ditch. He said, based on the current field measurements and the state requirements for the herring passage. So evidently everything is still okay for the herring to be moving back and forth, but they're gonna add a monitoring component to see if, you know, to monitor and see how that's gonna change, if it's gonna change over time. And that's it. If you guys have any questions, you can ask me now or wait till later.
Thank you, Tara. Mr. Franzuto.
Tara, do you have any idea when the FDA is going to come?
I mean, that's the $1 million question. I don't think that they're gonna probably tell us when they're coming, because the DMF doesn't let us know when they're coming either, for enforcement reasons. So, but we are trying to find out the contact for the FDA, because I think Roberto actually went to school with the shellfish person that works for the FDA. So we're hoping to, you know, kind of get to them and have a conversation with them before they come out here.
Well, you know, my thought on that is if it's after, if it's in July and August, that may be a good thing because it doesn't take a rocket scientist to look at the Hobart Avenue mooring fields and realize that there's no boats there with heads.
Yeah.
So all the numbers and fancy charts and all that other stuff aside, you can stand on the boathouse ramp and look over there and realize that it's not a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So, if they come in May or in October, you don't get that same visual to drive the point home. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good point.
it might be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And, if Santa Maria went to school with the guy, that's always a plus for the networking thing. So
Right.
anyway, thanks for your report.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Bossy,
Yeah, of course, someone would have to point out to them that those boats have no heads, probably. So,
Yep,
It'd be
well, that's a good point, Dave.
yeah,
Tara can do that.
okay. I had a question about buried in the town articles was $900,000 apparently for storm water runoff. Tara, are you guys involved in that at all? Or is the
Thais, you want to pipe in for that? Do you know?
Yeah, sure. We are so part of my update for water quality, we are involved in some stormwater mitigation with our restoration projects. So for bioretention, for instance, or rain gardens or bioswales. But that is something that we've had plenty of conversations with because we don't have much of a stormwater program. So I know I think this year is the beginning of getting the wastewater treatment facility, DPW, NRD, other nonprofits involved in kind of managing our stormwater. So that's the extent, but we are working on doing projects to mitigate what's going into our harbors and our ponds.
thank you, Thais.
Okay,
Dave,
thanks.
something related, Mr. Franzuto?
Yeah, I talked to David Gray. David Gray, I think, is going to drive the wagon on that with some DPW assistance, but
on the mapping?
Yeah, the
Mapping of yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah, I was as surprised as you were, David.
Yeah.
But it's a good start.
Yeah.
Mr. Brace?
Yeah, the question is for Tara. Do you think when the FDA comes, it's going to be some sort of, if we don't get a hold of whoever this person is that Roberto knows, are you concerned it's going to be some sort of sneak attack? They're going to come in, they're going to look around without being guided by us. I mean, how are they going to know to look for the things that were in the letter? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand. Usually what happens is that they contact JC and they are coming out to take water samples, but they're also doing enforcement for aquaculture and other things. So our department isn't always privy to that. It's kind of weird that, it's separated, but it is. But I'm hoping that, Jeff will give us a heads up, or he might know if and when they are coming. So, I don't have a problem contacting the DMF and asking them but I just really want to know who the contact from the FDA is, because I'm not sure that the DMF is going to relay that letter to the FDA exactly as it was intended.
Yeah, because, excuse me, Mr. Chairman,
Please.
You made such a huge effort to get everything right, to explain everything, to show how we are in compliance, to show what we're all about. And for them to just come down here and not pay attention or not see the letter and just look at it through their eyes and not our eyes, it just seems counterproductive.
Yeah, I think our next step is going to be to make some noise with it. If we don't get an answer, I think that we will get a lot of letters written in support of that letter. And hopefully, if we have to, contact our delegates or senators, maybe we could do that too.
Mr. Franzuto.
Did the FDA get a copy of your letter? Did you send them a copy?
I did not.
What, can I ask why?
We were sending it to the DMF. We
Okay.
didn't know that the DMF is the one that issues these orders
Right,
under the guidance of what the FDA put forward in their regulations, but I was unaware that we had a contact for the FDA that we could send it to, but I will.
well, in your, on your behalf, I did this stuff for 30 years and I didn't know we had an FDA coordinator
Mhm.
person. I never heard of that.
Yeah,
So,
I mean,
and you know, all you have to do is reach out and we'll, this board, I'm sure will write a letter. I'll write a letter, however many letters you want to shovel to them in support.
right. I think I'll probably email the DMF and find out see if they'll give me some of that information about when they're coming. You know, I always try to follow the chain of command first without going up and above, but if we have to do that, we will.
All right.
Thank you, Dave. Board members. More questions or comments on natural resources report?
Is there
Mr.
anybody other than that knows when this person is coming? Are they just going to show up?
I mean, it's similar to when they come and take water samples or they do enforcement. They call like the night before and they fly over. It's not very planned in advance.
Interesting.
Mr.
Tara,
Chairman?
Ginger, please.
Yeah, I was wondering if the eelgrass monitoring was something that could be done, through you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I was wondering if possibly the eelgrass monitoring was something that could be done by drone. And I
Yeah,
have another comment after that.
Yeah, I think, we are going through drone training within our department. We're starting with two people first, and then, we're going to expand after that. But I think the hope is to be able to do, whatever monitoring that we can do with the drone.
Mm-hmm. Oh, good. And I wanted to also comment on the herring thing. I know Bob DaCosta thinks that the herring aren't capable of getting in Nantucket Ditch, but I seriously disagree with him. I've seen the osprey coming back with herring. I looked at what he was complaining about with the shoaling into the North Head, but the North Head is still fully tidal and it's deeper than it used to be when I was a kid. So I'm actually more concerned that because the Nantucket Ditch was made bigger in the 1980s and the big culverts put in, and it's clearly tidal all the way into the North Head, and it's much more brackish and much less fresh than it used to be. My concern would be whether there was enough fresh water coming out, or if it was too saline to really attract too many herring. Excuse me. So that would be my question, I guess. If there's a standard for what do herring want in terms of fresh versus salinity?
I don't really have those exact measurements for what they want. I mean, we had 2 staff members that went out there and measured the ditch and the depth of the ditch to make sure that it met the state requirements. And I don't know that there was any other information that was taken besides that.
Tara,
Very good to know.
thank you, Ginger. Tara, aside from the osprey seen with a herring, is there actual witness of herring running when they should be or when they usually do?
I have not heard of any from Nantucket Ditch,
Okay,
but that's not to say that it's not happening.
right, okay. And refresh me, please, on the funding you're lacking for the Nantucket portion of the project. I'm just curious if, if someone were to reach out to the Civic Association of Nantucket or the Fisher's Landing, Warren's Landing Association, if they have one, and just thinking of this, recently reading about neighbors of the shooting range wanting to pitch in for an indoor, shooting area. And maybe there's somebody in Nantucket, like we've had at Shellfish Association, people stepping forward with donations for a good cause. Has there been any outreach in Nantucket to help fund that project?
We have done some outreach in the past. It kind of depends on the scale of the analyses that comes out of the project and who's doing it. Originally, when we presented the Nantucket project, we had a team of scientists from Stony Brook that specialize in eelgrass monitoring that were slated to do the baseline monitoring for the first time we did Nantucket, and that was the expensive part. If we're doing like bare bones, using our staff and using like Stephen Heck, who we've used in the past to help us with the research and then help write up the report and do the analysis, then it ends up being around, I would say 30 to 40 grand bare bones. But once you start involving other scientists and housing and all that kind of stuff, that's where the price tag goes up. And that's where it's been really difficult to get the money for the project, because I think if I were to guess, if we had a full team of scientists doing Nantucket out there, and you never know if you're going to have perfect weather days, so you have to allow for like this chunk of time, to allow for wind and all that kind of stuff. It's probably around 75 to 100 grand to do that. I mean, the housing alone for 1 month, when we looked at it, was like $40,000 to house 6 people. It's ridiculous.
Thank you, Tara.
Mm-hmm.
Board members, anything else on natural resources report? Anything from the public? Not seeing or hearing anything. We will move forward to old business. The liveaboard application, we had, this is like a relived discussion. Is there anything new to add, Mr. Braze?
Yes. So I had followed up with Erica about the form that Tara forwarded to us, and it's not Tara's fault, but she gave us a form that was passed to her. It was the old form, and it didn't have the information on it that we had specified should be on it. And Sheila got back to me. She was quite direct in her response, and said that there were things that should have been on the form, but we had gotten the old form. I don't know why, but so I think it's a question of one of us just going down to the Marine Department and ask for a liveaboard registration form and look at it, rather than waiting for Sheila to send it to us. Or maybe Tara has something to say.
Yes, please, Tara.
I think when I was looking for this form, Sheila was out of town on a family emergency, so she had her assistant go into her computer and get it, and so that's probably where the error happened. It was probably an old form.
Yep, no worries.
Okay, so
One question.
Mr. Bossy.
Did we ever hear from Erica? Because it doesn't appear in the new code. That's what's really concerning, but maybe it doesn't have to. I don't know, but
I didn't hear back from her. Obviously, she told Sheila, and then Sheila responded to me.
oh, okay, which
And
makes
then-
sense because we gave it to Sheila and Sheila submitted it. Okay.
Sheila was actually upset that I had asked the question of Erica, and I responded by saying that we were merely doing our jobs, following up. That we weren't complaining. We were just making sure that the work that we put in had gone into the new form. And I didn't hear back from her. So
Got it.
Simply
Okay.
said, we were told it was going to be in there, and then we were shown something where it's not in there. So I'd like to thank Mr. Bossy for staying on top of this, and please keep us on our toes until we are assured that what we've requested is in there. Mr. Franzuto, please.
I'll try and get a liveaboard, a new form. I'll see if I can get a copy and get it sent to everybody.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, Dave. Anybody else?
it might even be online,
Yeah, it could be. I'll call down there.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the liveaboard application?
They
No.
hate to hear from me anyway.
Excessive sand and scallops dredging plan. Well, we know that there's at least been some dredging discussion on the creeks. But anything else, anything fresh for the harbor that can be shared? Mr. Franzuto.
Yeah, I think there's enough issues going on that through you, Mr. Chairman, I think we need to request Jeff try and be at our next meeting so we can get an update on a couple of these things. It's I'm talking out of turn here, but it's not really fair to Tara to ask her about certain things that are just totally outside of her realm for her to follow up. And I just think that it would be good to request Jeff, once a quarter, or, to be the representative or a representative for the resource department, because the dredging plan, the update to the harbor plan, those are all things that Jeff could and should be able to give us an update on.
That's a great idea. Thank you, Dave.
If you want, I'll send him an email, but it might make more sense if you send him an email, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Yes, all right.
Just, I think once a quarter, once every 3 months is not, I don't believe to be excessive or overburdening to him.
Mhm. Okay. Just to back up a little bit on this, I'm just, having looked at the aerial view of where the Land Council intends to do their next eelgrass transplant / planting, I'm still concerned at how deep the granular sand is in that area, and I'm concerned that it could possibly be a detriment to the success of that project. So I'm just hopeful that some type of studying can be done, and because we know it's become well known that a lot of sediment has eroded into the harbor over the past 20 years, and some shoaling is being noticed. Areas are shallower than they used to be. This will stay on our agenda. And yeah, I agree with Mr. Franzuto that it shouldn't have to go through Tara, but I hope Tara hasn't, had any feelings about it. So you rebound well every time, Tara. So thank you. Board members, discussion, anything to add?
How do you gain access to some of the aerial photographs?
This was simply, that one was along with the application from the Land Council. It's probably in Concom records, maybe? I'm not sure. Tara, could you answer that? Please.
I think it is Concom, and I'm happy to send it around as well.
Okay.
I can email it to
Because
you.
I'd be interested in seeing a progression of year over year for like 10 years to see what we can identify as being a change and maybe come up with some ammunition with that type of resource to share with other people.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Any other discussion? Sand, dredging? Not seeing or hearing any. We'll move to health of the harbors, stormwater runoff, and harbor impacts. This is a fairly new topic we're going to keep on here. It's stormwater runoff. I think after the heavy rain we had about 2 weeks ago, and many heavy rains before that, it seems as though the DPW has to be deployed to Easy Street to shovel up about enough mulch. You could put up a sign that says free mulch. But of course, it's pretty soggy and muddy and mucky by then. And we know actually the coffee shop on Steamboat Wharf became flooded inside, had 6 to 8 inches of water on their floor. And this was not a high tide event. This was all stormwater. And he actually told me that the storm drains on Broad Street and Easy Street were totally clogged with mulch. And this is why Broad Street and Easy Street flooded and also flooded their store. It had nothing to do with a tidal event. Along with the stormwater runoff and harbor impacts, I think that the mulch is playing a major factor in siltation, especially in the Easy Street Basin. According to Tim Mooney, a diver that we all know, when he wades out to his boat and he gets about waist deep in the water, he says he cannot see from his knees down. So certainly some more education on this, something needs to be done to help improve what takes place during these storm events. Board members, anything to add? Discussion on stormwater runoff and its harbor impacts. If there's nothing to add tonight, I'd just like to ask all the board members to keep this on your radar. If you're out and about looking around during a storm, I think it's pretty obvious that we are ill-equipped personally and as the town, and I really don't believe the town is totally responsible. There are many people out there with houses with no gutters. Not many people have recharge into the ground on their own property. I think this is a major impact. We're taking roof water runoff, driveway water runoff, yard water runoff into the streets, into our storm drains. And as Thais mentioned, some mapping is going to be done. I think once a map is created of how far away the stormwater runoff is coming from and entering the harbor, it should be a big wake-up call to a lot of people. At least I would hope it would be. Anything else to add from the board?
Oh, Mr. Chairman?
Ginger, please.
Yeah, I've been talking to Rachel Freeman a little bit about the lily pond and that drain, and the land bank is definitely working on understanding a lot of the drainage that comes through Lily Pond and looking for ways to mitigate the cascades that come down from Academy Hill, say, and various other spots, and so that I know that they're actively working on those designs.
Thank you, Ginger. Anyone else? Not seeing or hearing any. Excessive lawn fertilizer use, update, discussion, new information. I think The public certainly let us know how they feel at town meeting. It'll be interesting to see the momentum that this takes. At the last Shellfish Association meeting, there was a decent amount of discussion on this topic, and it doesn't sound like there'll be any backing down. The NSA will be staying on top of this issue and are hopeful for a positive outcome. Board members, discussion, new information.
Yeah,
Mr. Brace.
yeah, I know that the town, in lieu of what we all want, the town has proposed regulation strengthening. I don't know. I just don't hold if you can't go on the property, if you can't go on someone's property and say, hey, you don't use that. I mean, because private property rights basically prevent the enforcement. I guess I'm skeptical.
Well, I was surprised to see how many landscapers are actually on board with this. Of course, there are plenty who are not. I think it would be wise that some type of an organic fertilizer that would be less impactful. We need to have some ideas in place to help mitigate what some people feel would be devastating to the landscape business on the island. I think we can still achieve green lawns for people, yet not be so harmful or creating such an impact to the harbor.
Mr. Chairman?
All right, I just saw Mr. Bossy first, then you next, Ginger.
Jeff Carlson spoke at the last select board meeting, and one of the things they want to push through is get back to education, get back to licensing, get back to training. And he echoed something that I had spoken to an owner of one of the large businesses, and they said they increase the fees, increase this. Granted, you can't go on the property to confirm it, but you can do it. There's a lot of street work they can do, but increase the fees, increase the enforcement, increase the actual fines, not the warnings, not the enforcement. And it comes down to maybe we do need, if we're really serious about this, is to hire another enforcement officer specifically for agriculture, because the people that are doing this correctly want to push this. They want to keep doing it correctly because they live here and they live with the results. Anyway, I think there's hopefully it's a momentum thing, right? It's as you said, Mr. Chairman, it's a momentum thing where hopefully this will keep it going and keep people chasing after this. But I think at least we're getting back to where we were pre-COVID, and some of the ideas to bump up the fees and bump up the training requirements and bump up enforcement, I think are really good ones.
Thank you, Mr. Bossy. Anybody else? Oh, yeah, Ginger, please.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, I think it's unfortunate, but nitrogen is nitrogen, and it doesn't really matter if the source is, organic or some, more processed form. I'm interested that so many landscapers did sign on to it, and I think that's very encouraging. So.
Okay. Well, I believe all board members should, keep this in your thinking process, and we're always looking for great ideas. So share them with us at our next meeting or any future meeting, please. Anybody else on fertilizer use? Mr. Franzuto?
Yeah, not to beat a dead horse, but there again, that's another topic that Carlson in 5 minutes could bring us up to speed on. So I really think it would be beneficial if he could attend.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Franzuto. We'll be reaching out. Thank you. Anybody else? Next item under Health of Harbors, FDA shellfish taking prohibition in mooring fields. Tara pretty much covered that in the report. Is there any more discussion? Not seeing or hearing any. Water quality testing, water quality report. We have Thais Fournier here tonight to share some new information.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do I have permission to share my screen?
Yes.
Okay, and sometimes it's blocked, so let me just try.
Through Mr. Brace, please.
Okay. Let's see. Can everybody see this?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. Thank you for having me tonight. And again, apologies for being a little bit tardy at the start of the meeting, but thank you for having me. So this is just, I just included a couple of slides just for some visual aspects of it, but just to update you on the 2021 water quality report, which we usually receive in the springtime of the following year. And this is because we finish, sampling with the pond openings in October. And so that gives them time to process all the information, look at the data, analyze the data, and then subsequently provide us a report. So that's why it usually comes a little bit later than most people are expecting. But in general, these are the sampling stations, all of them in blue, that I sample for specifically Nantucket Harbor. And based on 2021 data, along with Nantucket as well, it is supporting the highest water quality out of all the estuaries on Nantucket. So that is a good thing. I do preface that with, we still have declines in eelgrass and algal blooms that are covering our eelgrass. So even though based on our data, this is supporting high quality waters, we obviously still have some issues, which I will touch on for reasons why as we move on. In comparison though, into 2018 and 2019, Nantucket and Pulpus Harbor stations were showing high water quality. However, in 2020 and 2021, there was a decline in Pulpus Harbor West, which is NAN 5, you can't see it, but the West Pulpus Harbor. And that may be due to some of the stream inputs. We monitor the streams that are in that area, that some of them are near what was the cranberry bog. And so there has been some talks about remediation with the Conservation Foundation in the future. I know that they're doing their own water quality testing as well, and they want to do year round as opposed to the town sampling, which happens from June until September, aside from the pond openings, which happen in October. So there was a decline, at least in that area. As for Nantucket Harbor, the stations are quite less. There's 4, and one of them is in Hither Creek. Nantucket Harbor also, it's more opened, and we are 30 miles out to sea, so it makes sense that we do show high water quality with our flushing. It has supported high water quality over the past 5 years. However, the Hither Creek, as well as Long Pond, have, because they have their reduced tidal flushing, it has had water quality impairment. And over the past 10 years, Hither Creek, the station 1 in the middle, that has supported the poorest water quality within the Nantucket estuary. This is, some of you have seen this already too, because I did present to the select board. So if anyone was present for that, but this is just a little chart that just shows the 2 embayments, what the actual total maximum daily load is for nitrogen for each of them, as well as if we're approaching that target, the trend, our health score, and some remedial actions. So we are on trend to approach on average our TMDL, which is a good thing, and it is improving. And our trophic health score does show high to moderate water quality for both harbors. And this is based on key ecological metrics for water quality. So dissolved oxygen, organic nitrogen, inorganic nitrogen, water quality, clarity, excuse me. So looking at turbidity, SECI readings, and yeah, I think I said chlorophyll, which is a surrogate for how much phytoplankton or algae is in the harbors. And so we use this scale based on this criteria to create a habitat, scale. And so this is something that was implemented in 1999 through the Marine School at SMAST in New Bedford. And so this is a parameter that they've been using, that we have been using since the 90s. Tara mostly talked about some of the remedial actions, and I'll touch on some of the plans that NRD is doing specifically for water quality. But there is a lot of room for improvement, and I'll mostly wait for maybe some questions to get into discussions for fertilizer and stormwater, because those are two big components that contribute nutrients into the harbor. And Ginger had a good point of saying that, whether it's a more natural form, we always prefer anything that's more natural, but nutrients are nutrients. And so anything in excess that is happening is going to impact our water quality and can be in a negative aspect. So overall, we're still advocating for watershed management for the island, whether that's individuals improving water quality through, creating rain gardens on their home or using native vegetation, not using fertilizer, or bigger projects such as trying to ban fertilizer, or our stormwater program, which we desperately need. So I'm interested to see how that unfolds with David, as well as the other organizations that he said he wanted to bring in to manage stormwater. So this is our eelgrass on the whole entire island. The legend is really small. This is from 1995 to 2020. And the green is the eelgrass that we had in 1995. And the purple, if you can see that is currently, from 2020, the eelgrass that we presently have. So we've had about a 32% decrease since 1995, and we're averaging 1.6% loss of eelgrass each year. So although our water quality is exhibiting high water quality for our harbors, and this is a benefit of being 30 miles out to sea, again, it's not all perfect. There obviously needs to be explanations for our loss of eelgrass, as well as for our algal blooms. And some thoughts on that is coastal erosion and coastal development, which doesn't help erosion, that is contributing a lot of sediment into our water, which all of you know, and that's why we're having a sediment and a dredge plan, mostly for navigation purposes, but this also relates. So when you are increasing sediment into the harbor, that also is potential for covering eelgrass. There's also a sudden nutrient release that comes from sediments. So when you're dumping all of that in, or if it's eroding and we're getting a lot of development along the water, you're going to get an increase of nutrients from the sediment, which is going to therefore create blooms. And then what we are seeing is a lot of Lambrecht, or that algae that is covering our eelgrass. And so that is an issue as well. In addition to Lambrecht blocking out light for eelgrass, when we don't have eelgrass, obviously we're not having our habitat for scallops and fish. And also eelgrass increases oxygen because it's a plant in our water. So when we're having less eelgrass in the water, we're also decreasing our dissolved oxygen, which is imperative for scallops and fish and other aquatic organisms. And so over time, we're having less plants to uptake also the nutrients that are coming into the harbor. So it's kind of full circle with a lot of things going on with a decline in eelgrass. And I will say also, sea level rise too, although it's, we're still far off, we're still seeing some impacts of it. And we do risk our eelgrass being able to keep up with that. And so sometimes they'll just, even though they're underwater, but when it gets too high, they're not getting the necessary light and they eventually like submerge, and so that they can't grow properly with that. And the last bit I will say about increased turbidity in the water, or a decrease in water clarity because of sediment, it also increases warming because the particles are attracting, absorb sunlight. And so the more turbid your water is, the more warm it is. And so there's also implications for warming water and algal blooms and loss of eelgrass. So I just wanted to, visually show this, and where we're proposing to, I think Tara talked about this, for restoration of the eelgrass is around the 5th bend. And currently right now, there is no eelgrass there. So through conversations, it was a proposed site to help get that area. So I just wanted a visual for you all to see. And again, I was a little bit late, and so I might be repeating some of the updates that Tara provided. But some of the existing water quality projects that we do have, our water quality analysis and visualization tool that was released last year. I know there is some movement on the town website for kind of graphing and looking at water quality data, but I think it might be intimidating to the public, even though it was created for the public. But it's useful to kind of graph if you want to look at total nitrogen trends and you're just not waiting on people. You can go on there and graph it yourself and actually have the data to show people. And so with the fertilizer issue, I know people were, indicating that we were meeting our total maximum daily load. However, it's variable throughout the years. On average, we are on a trend that is improving, which is great. But for 2021, most of the head of the harbor was above its total maximum daily load. And you can look at that by using this tool. Tara did update you on the Eelgrass Pilot project. So we are trying to broaden that and continue with eelgrass, different ways of restoration and methods of getting seeds and planting. So we are trying that. And this is something that I do agree. I think Dave mentioned, or not Dave, excuse me. Dave mentioned for Jeff to kind of update on the status, because there's a lot of moving pieces with the Nantucket and Nantucket Harbor Action Plan, hazard mitigation plan, also our illicit discharge regulations, and that's currently in process. And I wish I had more details on that. And then some of our new projects, for those of you who attended town meeting, we got several okays to go ahead, which is great. One of them, we have funding included in fiscal year 23 for our Nantucket Harbor Watershed groundwater study. And that was partnered with the Great Harbor Yacht Club Foundation, because the last time we updated, what nutrients were going into the harbor was 1993. So this is something that I'm very excited to get going, so we can have that information. Additionally, the sediment transport and dredge plan that is happening. I mentioned this about stormwater. We're currently putting a bioswale, which is just acts like a rain garden near Sacajah Pond to assist with some of the flooding that happens in the area, and also to assist with the nutrients going into the pond. I know it's not the harbor, but in relation to the harbor, the area behind Sales, that was originally a bioretention area that was not properly maintained. I think it was installed in 2003 and then just kind of fell by the wayside. And so that is a project that we're redoing. We're working with the wastewater treatment facility to kind of clean out that area, and then getting consultants in to revamp that area. So it's helping also with the flooding that happens and the nutrients that are going into the harbor in that area behind sails. As for fertilizer, I agree. Enforcement it's quite hard to enforce something that you can't get on someone's property. But I know some of the regulations that Jeff was proposing was to get the amount of fertilizer that is put out, because we don't even have how many pounds are going into the harbor from fertilizer. And for me, that's just crazy that we don't even have that information. So a lot of the stuff that he's proposing will be useful and really great. Yeah, and as for enforcement, that's something that we're still trying to work our way around, but we're starting with something. So I'm grateful for that. And if anyone also has like ideas or suggestions, please tell me. Happy to pass them on. The more heads, the better to determine this. And one of the last things that we just received was a Flowcam, which is it's kind of like a microscope and a cytometer. It counts. And this is useful for water quality, one, because it helps cut down the processing time of when you're identifying harmful algal blooms that are happening in the harbor that might be detrimental to shellfish. And so this does this within 5 minutes, and then you can cover more areas. So instead of me going, taking however many hours to get a few samples, we can really, we can have public drop off samples to us, and we can process what's in the water. And if there's anything of concern, which will help manage our water quality in the future, which is great. And this also helps the hatchery as well, because they're doing their larval counts. And that is pretty time consuming, as well as their algae, which they're feeding the shellfish. So I just provided the water quality website that I hope some people occasionally will look at in my email as well. But if anyone has any questions, happy to make something up.
Thank you. Does that conclude your report?
Yes, it does. Thank you. I'll stop sharing if I can find where.
Thank you very much, Thais. I can tell you how excited I am, and I'm sure the rest of the board is, that you are having stormwater very important on the top of your list, and it's been a concern of ours. If there's some way we can support you, usually it's simply by letter, but to the select board or any other possible board that it would help to see. But I just want you to know that you will have unanimous support from this board. I think it's safe to say, to move forward and somehow expedite a stormwater runoff plan.
Thank you.
Board members, comments, questions? Mr. Bossy? Just giving a thumbs up. All right, and Mr. Franzuto as well. Thank you, Thais. New business, Land Council Eelgrass Restoration Project. I just wanted, we kept this on here in case there was any more discussion. We had the presentation by Emily Molden and Tara Riley as well on this project, several meetings in the past. And there may not have been a quorum or at least a full board at the meeting. So I thought I'd keep it on here in case there were any other questions or comments about the project. If not, we will continue with the Coastal Resilience Advisory Board update from Mr. Brace.
Okay, this is for the April, basically the April 26th meeting. In terms of anything earth shattering, I had three things. The select board approved 2 additional members for the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee, one from the Land Bank and one from FinCom or from the Capital Programs Committee. And then, I think I've already said this, but the at-large members then will be appointed by the Select Board. And then there's going to be we all know that the road washed out, what was it, 2019 at Pulpus, on Pulpus Road by Sacajah. Our assistant town biologist, Leah Hill, is trying to get a grant for funding to install reef balls at that corner to sort of create an artificial, well, a living reef for oysters to attach, for a habitat for fish. There's also going to be, I believe, restoration of the marsh on the other side by opening up the culvert. I think, and Tara, you can correct me, but I think to restore tidal flow through there. So there's actually 3 grants that are being applied for, and I'm scratching my head on all of them right now, but this seemed to be the one that was more in our area, doing restoration within Sacajah Pond. Am I being right, Tara? Does that sound right?
Yes, you're correct. It did during town meeting, the design and permitting was funded. But the grant that was what do you call it? The grant that Leah was writing did not go through. And it did not go through because of the amount of capital projects that our department received.
Okay.
I think we have like 10 large projects, so.
It was an MVP grant application, so it's municipal vulnerability program.
Yes, it was decided at the last minute to not submit it based on town meeting.
Okay. And then the other thing I wanted to report was the CRAC, the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee. We're starting to apply for grants for some of the short-term projects that are within the plan. And one of them is the downtown flood barrier feasibility study. And this is not, I repeat, not the concept thing that may or may not happen out in the harbor. This is not the wall that people are concerned about, that it isn't even, it's not even one of the 40 projects. This is basically a berm that runs like along Washington Street all the way across town over to somewhere down on Easton Street. And so our committee is looking for letters of support from the various boards that are concerned with the harbor, and they're asking us for a letter of support. Now, I think the end of June, I think, is a deadline for turning in our application. So we've got some time to think about this, to look at the plan again, to see what this is about. So when I say a berm, it's on land. It's not the thing that goes in the water. It's building up in front of, sort of between Washington Street and the beach. That makes sense to everybody?
Well, Peter, I was under the impression they were actually going to raise some of the streets themselves, and the street would be the berm.
I believe that that's true, that they're going to raise, that we would like to raise the street, but then there'll be a berm in front of that as well.
Okay. Mr. Franzuto.
Is it a sacrificial berm?
It's meant to be a berm that stops the water, a storm barrier. So it's not a berm that goes away like SPPF is putting sand on the beach to be taken as part of the littoral system. This is meant to be a barrier to if at all possible.
A permanent barrier.
Yeah, it's in the plan.
Above the high tide mark.
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
it's in the plan, Dave. You can go read it.
Okay. Actually, Mr. Brace, if input is needed by the end of June, our next meeting is June 7th and then June 21st. So if input is going to come from this board, we really ought to have it preliminary by next meeting and finalized by the 21st, just for the board members to keep this in mind, please. Mr. Bosley. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to ask if Scott has access to this, to the crack. I want to make sure you have a copy of it.
I don't have a copy, but I would like to see that.
Sure. Oh, yeah, it's important. Peter, can you send one, or did?
Scott is welcome to go to the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee's page on the town's website. Where
Okay.
you can download a copy
Great.
of the plan.
Thank you.
Mr.
Yeah, I
Bray.
have to myself take a look at this because I didn't realize they were just looking at just Washington Street. It'd be interesting to see how, when I look at the elevation maps and see how that flows into downtown. So if you protect Washington Street, what happens next door as you go into town?
Excuse me, Mr. Bosley. It's not just Washington Street. It runs through town.
Oh, it does. That's what I said. I do have to
Because-
look at the plan.
Yeah,
Right,
it goes
right.
from Easy Street across, then across the yacht club property, and right around Easton Street and Halbert Avenue, all the way back to the cliff, is the plan that I saw.
Just to be clear, so everybody gets it, so nobody yells at me. This is a feasibility, wait, this is a feasibility study. So in other words, does this work? Is this something we want to do? This is not, okay, we're doing this. So we're
Right,
looking
that's
at
fine.
this.
Yeah.
Okay, I know this is a touchy issue for a lot of people, and I want people to understand that it might take a couple of years before we even do the study. And then if the study determines that we should do this, then it's going to take 3-4 more years to permit and get approvals. It might be, who knows, what it didn't say, maybe even 10 years before the thing is built. So I just don't want people to get, and when I say people, I mean everybody in this meeting and everybody who might watch the meeting or read the minutes, the idea that the money is going toward building the thing. Okay. And you're getting the sentiment from me, but it's the same sentiment that was at our meeting. Vince had to be this way and make sure we all understood this is a feasibility study. So the meeting didn't blow up or whatever.
It better be feasible.
Yeah.
Thank you, Peter. Mr. Anderson.
Does that feasibility study include how to gain access to the properties that the berm would go?
Yeah. I don't know because the study hasn't been done yet. So.
Okay. I think it should include that so you understand whether it's town land or you have to go right of ways on people's properties.
Right.
Mhm.
Thank you, Mr. Brace. Is there anything else on this subject, coastal resilience?
No, nothing from that. Nothing else.
Well,
And our
as
next-
far as your clarification, Peter, gosh, we're all just, at least here, more curious than anything else. I think it's an exciting project personally, and you might add that at least it was mentioned in the past that when a project does begin, they'll be starting more of a pilot project type approach, more or less to see how the public reacts. Is this true, Mr. Brace?
Well,
and to show the public what it's going to look like. I thought a couple of strategic spots were going to be created, and then go from there with it.
yes. So, in order for us to, because of the way that town and state and federal government moves agonizingly slow, we're getting going as fast as we can to get grants, to get things going. But there are 3 projects that that the town agrees, I guess, that need to get going as fast as possible, so people do see why things need to be done. And those 3 projects are, I believe they are First and Second Bridge, and what that entails is raising the roads approaching the bridge and actually putting a bridge in instead of just having a culvert. It's going back to when it was a bridge. And they used to be wooden bridges both there, and then they went to a culvert. So putting actual bridges in, raising the roads, I believe, from where that sharp corner is, and then going over Second, and then going past Ginger's house and raising up and going over that bridge and then going toward the landfill. The second project is a road raising and possible bridge at Folger's Marsh, between the two marshes. And the third project is, I guess, a road raising at Sackatcher Pond. So all of that is, you know, it's twofold. It's, yes, we need to do this because, oh my God, the water's coming up. And yes, we need to do this so the public can see, hey, the water is coming up. We need to do something, and we need their support. And I mean, there was a study. I'm sorry, there was a survey done by Remain Nantucket Envision Resilience program that they started, and they surveyed. Let's see, they did two, one in February and then there was one last year. And all of the data together, 679 people responded, and a majority of the people who responded, a larger majority of the people who responded, said they were alarmed about sea level rise impacting Nantucket. And a large majority of people said that they support the actions of town government to solve these problems. So yes, 679 people is not the entire population of Nantucket, but you know, we just had our elections and only 25% of the electorate was there. So 679 is a good number. So we're told.
Thank you, Mr. Brace. Board members, questions or comments for Mr. Brace's report for Coastal Resiliency Advisory Board? Not seeing or hearing any. Do we have any public questions or comment in tonight's meeting? For Mr. Anderson and the rest of you, Mr. Anderson, I highly encourage, you know, you can either tell us now or anytime. We have to have our agenda for our next meeting done. It's 2 business days in advance of when the meeting is. So Peter and I usually do that on a Friday. If there's a long weekend, a holiday weekend, we'll do the agenda on a Thursday. You can get in touch with either one of us if you'd like to have something added to the agenda. Previous board members, some have taken certain projects as a pet project. One past board member worked diligently for his 3 years on the board on the subject of eco-friendly moorings. I thought that was very admirable of him. A more recent outgoing member, Mr. Sidlowski, has been very just informative by looking up information, as also Mr. Bossy does right during the meeting, and being able to keep us informed on if there's something lacking in what we're talking about at the moment. And I've always appreciated that in both of them. So if there's something in particular in mind, I highly encourage you to take it as a pet project, share it with us here with the board. And research is always good. We do not have paid staff, so to speak, like other boards. Peter is a volunteer secretary. So everything's kind of done in-house here. Of course, we have representation from Marine Department and Natural Resources, but work on our own sometimes is required. So we have not updated our goals and objectives in a couple of years. So Peter and I may be talking about adding that to a future agenda. If there are goals and objectives you feel the board should be pursuing, I encourage all board members to jot those down. And there is some information out there on what previous goals and objectives were. If that can be looked up somehow by you, Mr. Anderson, that's fine. Peter, Mr. Brace may be able to help you with that. We also have a summer schedule. Normally, we knock off 2 meetings in the summer, so we will only meet 1 meeting in July and 1 meeting in August. I see your head cocked a little bit there, and I did the same thing my first year here. Hey, I want to get stuff done. Let's not skip a meeting. But the summers are busy. Staff is busy during the summer as well. And I actually got used to very quickly and understanding that the summer schedule makes sense. So either at our next meeting, June 7th, or the meeting after that, June 21st, we'll have a vote on our summer schedule.
I appreciate that feedback, Andy.
Okay, is there anything board members would like to add, recap, or items for our next meeting? Anything to add before we entertain a motion for adjournment? Mr. Franzuto.
Have we heard any forward progress on the Lambrecht aquaculture grant transfer?
You're a mind reader.
I think I reported at our last meeting that Sean Fitzgibbons had come in and met with Jeff and Ted as well. And I spoke to them briefly just about the bird deterrents that are required this year, but that was the extent of our conversation. But they are working towards the transfer of the lease.
Okay.
From what I have heard, I was talking with a friend of Mr. Fitzgibbon. Mr. Fitzgibbon sounds like a very energetic, ambitious young man. Mr. Lambrecht will be continuing to work along with him in adjustment into it, but Mr. Fitzgibbon has already been involved with other oyster farmers. He's involved in oyster shucking with the Emil Bender as well. So I'd really like to congratulate the entire board and everybody involved with this. I think in the end, we made the right decision. The acreage is going to be active this season. And we have a new young man in the harbor that's become an oyster farmer. Before we close out, I would like to a quick update, if hopefully nobody minds, on the last Shellfish Association meeting. It was on May 10th. Some grants were given out. NBI tell me if I'm pronouncing this properly, Tara. Microbiennial study. $2,663. Valerie Hall got $3,000 for an internship. July 19th is the State of the Harbor Forum at the Nantucket Yacht Club. The NSA is hoping to work on a general information packet to educate the public on what they actually do. The shellfish regulations that are handed out with shellfish permits may be updated. This is something Thais may be involved with. Tara mentioned the June 12th Oyster Fest, 12 to 4 at Cisco. And the seed moving project in Nantucket, a few scallopers that helped out: Bruce Beebe, John Holgate, John Logan, Manny and Mark Souza, Bill and Adam Spencer, Bob and Ray DaCosta, Carl Sherwin, Bruce Cowan. I think they should all be congratulated, and the NSA as well, for shelling out, I believe, over $10,000 to pay these men $500 a day to use their boats and equipment and fuel to move the seed. A very large amount of seed was moved. And the seed will be monitored with dive surveys and surface of the bottom and surface and bottom temps. Actually 12,000 was invested, I guess. Dissolved oxygen, the size, and some seed was moved into town. So a comparison of the seed moved to town versus Nantucket and their health and survivability will be monitored also. And I'd also like to mention that the NSA was concerned about fast ferry speed, which was on our agenda not too far in the past. We sent a letter to both boat lines, but it sounds like it's on the NSA's radar as well, that they're concerned about the speed and the shoaling being created over in the Watershed. And talked a bit about fertilizer and how the Board of Health may have its own authority to establish their own regulations. If there's nothing, no questions or anything to add, Mr. Franzuto, the meeting, they're trying to keep their meetings to an hour, and this one went for an hour and 45 minutes, and I was kind of waiting there with bated breath to bring up the stickers for the dumpsters about hazardous waste. And was not able to. I will be sure to at their next meeting, because I can't get it off my mind, especially since you have pressured me to do so. And it was,
Well,
you know,
I didn't mean to pressure you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a thorn in everybody's side, I guess.
that's and a good one. You're a soft thorn. I like that, Dave. That's okay. Thank you. If there's no other, Mr. Brace?
But I mean, can't you just email Samantha and say, what's going on with the sticker that we all worked on that NSA committed to paying for? And say, what's up with that? The meeting went too long, but I mean, it's old business that should have been handled, and why are they just sort of giving us the brush off?
You're absolutely right, Mr. Brace. So I'll do that.
I mean,
I've got
one of the benefits of being secretary is you get to be at the meeting twice. So you get to see what people are saying, and what I see in Samantha Danette is someone who's tenacious, who's going to help the NSA and the larger shellfishing community, but she can't just take over and blow off everything.
No,
this is something that was started before she started, and anyway.
Well, actually, it was designed by the previous director, Christian, and actually Brooke was supposed to send it to every board member. So I have a direct line to Samantha, and I'll get on this tomorrow, Mr. Brace. Thank you for. Is there anything else from the board? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, Mr. Chairman, this is Ginger.
Thank you, Ginger. The motion's made by Mr. Bossy, seconded by Ginger Andrews to adjourn tonight's meeting. All in favor, Mr. Bossy?
Aye.
Ms. Andrews?
Aye.
Mr. Brace?
Aye.
Mr. Franzuto?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Take care.
Yeah.
Tara.
Good night.